Good morning. My name's Tony. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is November 21st, 2010. And on that day, you know, I've done this a lot, and it's so a little over 13 and a half years ago, I was homeless, had a restraining order and divorce papers, and was trying to drink my way into killing myself. I had a plan. I was living up the Rattlesnake and waiting. I don't know what I was waiting for, but my plan was to lay down in the creek and die of hypothermia. And I had spent a week prior to mapping out how far away I could get. So even if I had second thoughts, I would still die. So the range is about 2 miles until and it was cold like this. It was colder. It was like 15 degrees. And one night I just decided I was going to do it. And I locked my truck, got naked and threw my keys in the snow and went down to the creek and got down on my knees, and I don't know what happened. I blacked out, came to, my truck was running. My clothes were all folded up on the console. Couldn't figure out. The only thing I can tell you is that there is a God in my life, and that day he was with me. Took a day off, and what had happened in the interim of that is I went to court for my restraining order, and I didn't know anything about AA, but right before you go into the courtroom, there's a little thing that has our pamphlets in there. You know, the ones we pass around still to this day, meaningless and stuff. And for some reason, I grabbed one that day. That was like 2 weeks before this episode. And when I came to in my truck, that pamphlet was sitting on my clothes. And I went to my first AA meeting. It was up the Rattlesnake. It took me like 45 minutes to walk 200 feet. And when I got there, I knocked on the door, and there was a bunch of people in there, a bunch of old farts. They're happy and cheery and shit. And anyway, this little lady, which some of you have been around, her name was Mary Laura, and she opened the door before I could open the door, and she asked me if I was there for a meeting, and I didn't even say anything. She just grabbed me, pulled me in, set me down in this seat, and I was really scared then. I had a big, huge Carhartt coat, and I took it off and I threw it in the corner just because I was disgusted with you people. And this little dog got off this lady's lap, went over and pissed on my coat. But that's the start. And I left that meeting with a little hope, and I made it to the nooner that Saturday. And it was the first time in 25 years that I'd gone 3 hours on my own without taking a drink. And then this is the hook. Yeah. I got to that meeting, and it was in November, and it used to be a lot busier, like with court stuff. And I sat by the door, and the basket came around, and there was a bunch of papers, and I didn't have any idea what that meant. And I started unfolding them, and I folded them all out. It was at the MTT, and I folded them all out on the ground and figuring they were directions or something. I didn't know. And this lady, who is my best friend today, was sitting next to me. And she just asked me really nice if I had a paper to be signed. And I said, no. And she said, well, just fold them back up and put them past the basket. And it was the first time in years that somebody actually was nice to me, you know, and didn't make fun of me for doing something. And I was hooked. You know, that person showed me, and my whole sobriety, and it's taken years to figure it out, but it's just a love story. It is, you know, it's just people loving me when I couldn't love myself. And I used to hear for years about, you know, to keep it, I had to give it away. And I thought that for a long time, I thought that was my sobriety. And it's really love in my eyes, you know, it's like we love each other regardless of how far down we have, or if we made mistakes and gone back out. And, you know, and I'm most grateful that when I came to my first AA meeting, that there was people there, you know, because if there would have been a book, I'd be dead today. You know, I need people, and obviously you need me too. And it's the only place I ever came that I actually asked for help and got help. Still, it's the hardest thing I have to do at 13 years sober is ask for help. But I'm getting better. It's progress, not perfection. So a little bit of my story that, you know, the first 5 years, I did what was suggested, and I had great sobriety, but, you know, arbitrarily using stuff. And arbitrarily means like only when I need it. And, you know, God was a big one, and principles were another one. Practice principles, but I practiced them scantily. And I got all the shit I wanted. But in the process, I lost myself and got into a really toxic relationship. And, you know, I found myself again suicidal at 7 years sober. And I got with a guy named Charlie. A lot of people know Charlie. He was a pretty straightforward kind of guy. And did another round of the steps and got to the fourth step. You know, a lot, and don't get me wrong, a lot of cool stuff happened, but, you know, and I'm in a room with not newcomers, so, you know, it's about recovery. It's not about how great I was, or telling you what I didn't do right. And I didn't drink, but I was ready to kill myself. And anyway, I got down to the root of the whole problem, and, you know, and he kept asking me what my biggest fear was, you know, at 7 years sober. It took me a while. It took me step work and stuff to figure out. And what I was afraid of was becoming somebody else. You know, I built this life where it was, you know, I've been through all the stuff. You know, I was 3 to 5 years sober. You know, I was a king of AA, not listening to the old timers, you know, because shit, I knew better. I mean, look at the life I have now. And, you know, some of the biggest resentments that I had in AA when I was new have become my biggest assets. You know, I remember, you guys know, you know, Three Finger Dave. I was a couple months sober and telling him he was full of shit and how I was here to save the world. And he just said, you know, still it rings in my ears every day. He's like, get off the cross. We need the wood. How dare you say that to me? But I mean, there is stuff along the way that I pick up and I carry along with me. And anyway, what I found out, what I was most afraid of, and then what do I do about it? Well, I was driving home from the sunrise meeting one morning, and there's a spot by Hellgate that I stop. It's one of those stops that part of my story is that I was driving home in 1990, I was driving home from work. I worked at Coke and worked nights, and I was driving home at like 5 in the morning one morning, and there was a guy in the street right in front of Hellgate, right where I went to high school. You know, my kids, my mom went to high school there and everything. There was a guy in the street, and I pulled him. I went over and I rolled him over, and it was my friend Sean M. And he was passed out, and I drug him off put him under this bush, you know, and didn't do anything, didn't call cops or anything. He's an old party buddy. You know, he's one of my best friends. And anyway, that story is later that I was at my 20th class reunion, and there was this guy named Sean M. there. He was glowing. You know, he had that. Whatever we have, he had that. And I, you know, of course, shit-faced drunk, you know, trying to figure out. And that's the only thing I remember about that class reunion. And then at 6 months sober, I was in a meeting and he walks in. But no promotion. It was all attraction. You know, he knew he'd been sober long enough to don't interfere with my downfall, which love him to death. We're really good friends today. But Anyway, I stopped at that Helge and I was thinking about the first third step I did, and I was thinking about the 7 years leading up to that. And, my first principle is honesty. I was like, I always kept asking myself, I was like, do I really believe in a power greater than myself? Or am I just, I was getting by on the skin of my teeth is what I was doing. And it got me in a lot of trouble. So I did an honest third step on Waterworks Hill. And my life changed in the blink of an eye. I was getting, I could start to hear things, it's like the real things in my head, in the God thing, and I really started practicing principles in all my affairs and adding a bunch of principles to all my affairs. And the result of that toxic relationship, I ended up 1 year walking 4,277 miles, is straightening out my head. It's all this stuff, but everything I've got in this program, I've had to do something to get it. I've had to, and I stay really vigilant, not being where I was yesterday, and headspace. And when I did that third step, I got this, this God conscience, and then the idea was to be a nice guy. That is the most dangerous spot I've ever been in, because I'm practicing principles and having to be a doormat for people because I wanted to be a nice guy. It didn't work. Sounds good, but and then later on I kept praying for opportunities for humility, basically, and then things got different quickly. And the idea now is to be like a good man. It's like show up, but I can still stand for something that I believe in, and do my best. The whole idea for me now is to not hurt anybody. And a lot of stuff, there's a lot of stuff that's happened that's not great. I don't know. AA has given me a life and everything in it. 4 years ago, my mom died. She was 10 years sober with no program, but she was one of my best friends. And I look over at Trevor, and we've been through this, and that good man comes out. I didn't lose my shit. I like that. I was too, holding my mom's hand when she passed away, and it was beautiful. At the moment, it was really painful, but it was really beautiful. I built a relationship, and she didn't have to worry about me anymore. And what came about that is, I really learned to think about others before I think about myself. And when I initially heard it, I got my 9-year coin, and later that afternoon, I found out she was terminal. But it took a couple of days for it not to be all about me. It's like, and then I was sitting there, and she couldn't talk anymore because her cancer broke her jaws. And I didn't have to say I'm sorry or tell her I loved her or anything like that. I was at the steadiest point in her life, and then I realized how scared she is. She's losing son, daughter, husband, life, and quickly became about her and not about me. And it's happened a lot after that. But I've done despicable shit in my. I guess the greatest part of my whole journey has been the relationships that I have with my son and my ex-wife. And she was the one that gave me the restraining order. And that was the first time that I'd ever experienced love, and I didn't even know it was happening at the time. But that lady, bless her heart, today, and I've spoke to her and told her many times, she loved me enough to let me go. This whole 13 years has been unlearning all the shit that I practiced for 40 years. And it's been quite a road, but the more I let go of that and pick up principles and help other people, the further I get away from my ego. God, I just got this, you know, egotistical maniac with an inferiority complex, and careful what you wish for. And anyway, so when I was drinking last year, my son was 7, and he took care of me. He was my caretaker. He would change my shitty pants, clean up the house, cook his little sister dinner, and put me to bed and lie. And he found out how to pay the bills, sign my name. I couldn't sign my name. It was just a complete devastation, you know. So part of this was, you know, I thought when I got here I was getting sober for him, and believe it or not, I was here getting sober for me. And today we talk openly. He's my best friend. He calls me every day. He stops by every day. But the living amends part of this, you know, he digs up the past a lot. And I lost him. And at a year sober, after I stayed sober and, you know, did my best to think about others, without me knowing, he showed up with his mom at my door, and he lived with me for 6 years and didn't have a relationship with his mom. Yes. How does this work? I don't know, you know. And it's the process of this thing is, the other day I was in a meeting, and a friend of mine shared about how she hadn't talked to her kid in 6 years, and fumbled around on her phone and dialed the number of her son, who had her blocked but had unblocked her, and got a 2-minute conversation. You know, that's, to me, screw the rest of the shit, you know, what I do or what I think. Yeah, I get goosebumps from her story because I've been there. You know, it's not redemption. It's not doing this. It's trying to do the right thing for everybody else involved. And I always seem to get what I need. I don't get it right away, you know, but I got to be sober to see this kind of stuff that's going on. I have no control over, you know, so a big part of my thing is getting out of the way, showing up, shutting up. And anyway, it's, I don't have a real good relationship with my daughter. She's younger, you know, and I tried, and lack of power and control is my dilemma. And I had to let it go, but I didn't know how to do that. You know, it has very little to do with drinking. It's my mind that you guys are helping me get through life on life's terms without losing my shit and hurting people. But it's like her, you know, it's my living amends is staying sober. You know, and I treat her mom with respect and dignity, and I'm welcome back out there. So, yeah, there's a kind of all over the place, but it's kind of way alcoholics are, is kind of all over the place. There's so much I want to tell you that would be meaningless boosting my ego. But, you know, recently, my sister, will throw her into the mix. So she was older than me. She was my drinking partner since I was in the 8th grade. She was in high school. She could drink. And I hung around her. She was really a tough lady. And she was protected me, but I ended up doing a lot of older things when I was younger with her. And we drank and we fought, and I got her kicked out of the house. I had this golden boy thing about my family that I never got in trouble. I never had curfews. But anyway, I disappeared for a couple of weeks with one of her friends that was married. And I was a sophomore in high school. Yeah, I came home and she was gone. Her and my dad had gotten in a fight because she was supposed to be in charge of me. Anyway, I didn't get any trouble. But anyway, she went off the rails then. And that was a long time ago. And this year, I kept waiting because she was really bad for all my sobriety, drinking, lost everything, lost a husband, bleeding to death on the couch, but she kept drinking, and I tried to help, and I sent people from AA up there to help her. And then, 2 days before my 13th birthday, I get a phone call that she's on life support. I went up to Kalispell, said my goodbyes. Her liver was completely shot, and it killed all of her colon inside. She was on life support. And then on my 13th birthday, on that day, I got my coin at the sunrise meeting and walked out of the meeting, and the phone rang, and she died. So she died on my AA birthday. So, but it's one of those things that I was really sad about it, but the thing that, what bothered me worst is we had a member pass away a week later, and that bothered me more because at least that lady was trying. She died drinking, but she was at least trying this program. My sister would never try. She didn't want to. And it's a really mind blow to figure out what's going on. And I had to quit doing that, but it really got me cemented in not taking that first drink. So I know this has been quite a journey. I find it hard anymore to even realize that I was the same person I was 13 years ago. But relationships have been, I don't know if mended would be the correct thing. But when my sister died on my birthday, the best text message I got was from my ex-mother-in-law. My ex-mother-in-law lived right next to us out in Tura, and her and I didn't get along at all, like to the point where I put 1,000 firecrackers in our burn barrel on Christmas. So because I knew she would go out and burn all the shit in our burn barrel, the big 55-gallon thing. Hid it down in there, and then I hid in my garage where I could see, and shit, sure, that worked great. Literally, the can exploded, and she fell down, and she's a heavy-set lady that's not in real good shape, and she's floundering around out on the ice, and I'm laughing, Anyway, I'm keeping it all alcohol related, program related. I would drive by her house after that every morning, and I would stop and give her the finger, and she would come out on her front porch and give me the finger. And she was the one amends that I would made that I couldn't make because I was afraid I was going to get hurt, right? And when I gave my ex-wife her amends, she had got a hold of the big book somehow. It was terrible. But I had that friend of mine I told you that was sat next to me. She didn't have any idea I was giving an amends, and I went to Youth World because I didn't want, my ex-wife was very violent, and that's another part of the story that I don't talk about is, she was very abusive. And it's not just women that get abused. I mean, she almost killed me at my son's 7-year birthday party. I said something and she hit me with a pan. I still got it. And I fell down and she was giving me the boots with her cowboy boots on, and my nephew was there and stopped it, but I never fought back. I did somewhere in there, there's no principles. I can't find the principles to hit women or abuse women. I didn't even try and stop her. But that was the thorn in my side. It's still big. You can see it. I never did anything about it, but it was the thorn in my side. It was a resentment. And what I did in the process to get over that resentment is I found this magic word and action. It's called forgiveness. You know, and that it's a blessing today. It's here. It's not like, oh, it reminds me of her. It's like, wow, that's what love is. In the time I didn't know because I was so screwed up. But you know, it's my amends to my ex-mother-in-law was 2 years, and I didn't have the right place. And I was leaving Albertsons one day, and she was parked out front, and she couldn't start her car. She wasn't strong enough to, you know, when your car locks the handle and you got to ease it off to start it. And I walked by, being nice and polite. And anyway, she asked me, she said, could you start my car for me? And literally, I mean, this doesn't sound like much outside of these rooms, but this lady wanted to kill me at one point. You know, and I stayed sober for a couple of years, and she still thought, you know, the resentment was like I got my 2-month coin and gave it to my daughter. And my daughter went home and called me 15 minutes later, in tears, saying that Grandma showed me where you bought the coin on the internet. You're not sober. It's just a lie. You know, let's build the resentment up a little bit more. But you stay sober, and don't drink, and don't be a dick, and be nice to her daughter, and treat your kids with respect and yourself. So anyway, I started car for her. Didn't say a word, didn't say anything. She never said thank you, but she drove away. I shit you not. I saw a little smile as she drove away, and life changed. I mean, her and I get along famously. My sister dies. 13 years after that, or 11 years after that, I get a text message. It says, I'm so proud of you. You know, I'm sorry I doubted you. You know, it's like, this is the shit that gives me the goosebumps, the emotional part of this. You know, sometimes I don't know what I'm doing or who I'm helping or why I'm helping. And I'm sure everybody else in here thinks that too, but you don't have to have 50 years to help people. You know, I mean, what Katie shared the other day about her son, I mean, that has been on my mind. And the beautiful thing about that is I'm not thinking about myself. You know what I mean? My happiest, we had a thing about happiness the other day. I live a real joyous life. You know, it's fueled by nicotine, caffeine, sugar, love, and God. You know, basically that's how it runs. I mean, that is absolutely how it runs. And a guy with an urgent sense of personality, you know, it's sometimes I overlook the magic of what's going on, but not very often. And when I see it happening in you guys, and I can relate, that's the hardest part. You know, I went to a alcohol counselor, state ordered. I went in and I sat down, and he was asking me questions. You know, this was like 6 months sober. He was asking me questions, and I was like, they weren't questions that you would ask me. You know, I asked him, "Are you an addict, alcoholic, or something?" You know, and he's like, "Oh no, but I've been to all these schools." And I just got up and I said, "No disrespect, but you can't help me." He's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "When I tell you how another alcoholic, how I'm feeling, or how screwed up my head is, you know, they crawl down in the hole with me. You know, it's like empathy and not compassion. It's like, you know, I've been there and I know, you know, when I tell you I'm afraid, that means, you know, lock the guns up and lock the booze up." But anyway, it didn't work. This seems to work. And there's so much added. I'm completely different than I was a year ago today. You know, I did some step work right after with Charlie, and that guy that I wanted to become, was afraid to become, I can't get enough of. And I found out what the real addiction in my whole entire life has been: attention. It's like literally attention. You know, I got it when I was drinking. I got it when I was arrested. You know, I got it. You know, my attention was I was a really mean drunk. You know, I was a blackout drinker with a red out temper. You know, that unpredictability, I got a lot of attention. And then I get sober and it's the same thing, you know, man, I'm getting all this attention, you know, then you live without good attention for a long time, you know, you get kind of addicted to the, you know, being the hip slipping cool guy of AA, you know, I walk in and I glow and I got all this shit going on, but part of that being a good man, you know, a year ago, or when after my mom died, I built this big Facebook page, you know, it's an outside issue, but it was big and it had its purpose. It was for connecting with people that lost parents, you know, connections, the opposite of addiction. And I made some good stuff, but I let my ego get in the way. I built this giant thing and it was becoming work and it was wasn't affecting my principles much. It was affecting my ego. You know, it was like, became my life. And I just, you know, I got down one night and asked God for help. I didn't know what it looked like or what, but I was pointing in that. I got up the next morning and just quit the whole Facebook thing. You know, it was like 6 hours of my life were gone, you know, productive. But the good man part was like the deflation of ego in a egotistical world is one of the toughest things I've had to do, you know, and figuring out that I do have some discipline over my feelings and emotions. You know, I haven't lost my shit in 4 years. I've had a lot of opportunities to hurt people the God that is priority in my life right now, I hear him. And it's not telling me what to do. It's what I hear is, you know better. You don't act like that anymore. I know. It's so yeah, the love of God. I hear the grace. You know, I'm sober by the grace of God. I'm sober by the love of God. And I don't have to be what the strength and the courage that every one of you in here gives me. I can be that person. I can be a good man. I don't have to impress you. I don't have to do shit. You know, there's stuff I do beyond this program. You know, between 350 and 400 hours of community service that nobody knows about. You know, and I don't do it it's like I got a new employer, it says in the book, and I understand what that employer is. I don't have any money, but if I died right now, you know, I'd be one of the richest guys in this room, without a doubt. You know, I have a lot of love in my heart, and that's what happened when my mom died. I was clear enough to figure out that, you know, as I kept hearing you know, I'll go outside these rooms and your mom dies, and everybody's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, so sorry your mom died." And it was sympathy, and then, you know, it didn't feel right. I come to these meetings, well, my mom was dying, and I'd sit here and say, God, I don't need your sympathy. I need your sobriety, and it's love. You guys wouldn't let me have a bad day. You wouldn't let me crawl in that self-pity of that, you know, and I see examples. I see Trevor over there, you know, listen to his story about his dad. It's identical to my story with my mom. His story was identical to Mike's with his wife. You know, it's like, wow, what do? We come here. You know, if you're having troubles, come to an AA meeting. You know, it's just it. I mean, I'm not telling you what to do. I don't know what's best for you, but I have examples in my life of people that have gone through trauma. And, you know, I look at my friend Greg back there. He's going through shit that I couldn't even imagine going through. And I don't understand, but I know how you're feeling, you know, and it's here. And it'll be here, even when you're not here, it'll be here. The connection, but it's up to me to do something about my sobriety. I can't sit at home and feel sorry for myself, you know, sit in my own shit. So yeah, the discipline over myself is, and I don't, you know, I truly believe that to give it away, to keep it, I have to give it away, you know, and it's loving. Like the homeless people I helped. I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't know how to help. I thought I did, but I didn't, and most of the time it's, I heard something the other day that a homeless guy said, and he said, by helping, the food doesn't matter, the clothes don't matter. It's the fact that you make me not invisible. Uh, and I can deal with that. I spent a lot of time outside of these rooms trying to change the world. But it's true what they say, you have to change yourself first, and to change the world isn't feeding every homeless guy. It's maybe stopping and saying, are you okay? How are you today? Or, my obsession now is picking up garbage. That's what I do. I clean homeless camps, and I don't want anybody to see me. I tell my son that's what I'm doing in case I don't come back from those, because it's scary shit. And I don't know, it's like God's with me, and it's okay. It's okay to not have any money. It's okay to not be able to have all the shit I want. I don't know. I got great relationships with the people that I don't even know yet, if that makes any sense. So I don't know. Cut her down early, I guess, but this is the greatest decision I've ever made. Think about all the bad shit I've gone through, but not as much as I think about all the good shit. And I guess that relationship I had with that girl that almost killed me. I've never in my life been treated so poorly by somebody. And it took me 2 years of not, I don't like to say I built a boundary, but I built a wall. And she was a stalker, and every day she would stalk me, and I just didn't engage. And I asked for relief. This is so beautiful. This is one of the greatest things I ever got. I'll tell you the greatest thing I ever got. But I prayed about it, and that honesty part came, that principle. And I honestly and wholeheartedly forgave her. That was the question. That was what was in my mind. And I asked for the opportunity. That morning, I got up and I walked down where I walk every morning at 6 o'clock every morning. I don't sleep. Sorry, that's the other part. And sure as heck, she was walking right by, and I walked up to her and told her I loved her, gave her a hug. Didn't have to say you're forgiven or anything. Literally that day, I've maybe seen her once in the past 3 years. But that's how it works, but I got to be honest. And I think the greatest thing that's happened is about 3 years ago, I really helped this homeless guy. He drugged me to the bottom. I spent all my money. Took all the food out of my house. I gave him all the clothes. I had a couple of people helping me. And it was winter time, and it was to the point where it felt like I was my son when he was 7. I was cleaning this guy's shitty pants, and cleaning him up, and it lasted for about 2 months. And finally one day I just couldn't do it anymore. It was over. God's helping, and this guy had on my grandpa's old coat, and the only pair of wool pants I could find, and it was raining. Anyway, I went to Walmart and got him whatever I could find. I was buying him all this shit, and I gave him an umbrella, and I just told him, I said, I can't help you anymore. It was a humility part. I was not helping myself, and this guy was, driving me nuts. And anyway, I walked away. His name was Jack, and I walked away, and all he said was, thanks for showing up and helping and being my friend. That's the greatest thing I've got in my sobriety, the greatest moment of my life. And I turned around, he was walking away, and I bought an umbrella for him, and I didn't realize I'd bought him a kitty umbrella. This homeless guy walking away in this camouflage coat with this umbrella just covering his head, like this. That was the greatest thing. Why I stay sober. That was it. It showed me that I could think of somebody else, I could love somebody else unconditionally, and that was enough. And I don't know where he's at. I don't know. I've asked and nobody knows. Maybe he's passed, maybe he's got sober. I don't know. But that's show up, don't be drink, don't be a dick. It sounds really simple, but it's a daily thing. And the thing I'm most grateful for is that I still believe that the first drink will get me drunk. Second thing I'm grateful for is that I haven't got this figured out. I don't know shit. I've been sober a while, helped a few people. Haven't taken that first drink, and really curious to see what's going to happen instead of trying to figure out what's going to happen. I don't know. I wouldn't have told you that where I was at today, where I was a year ago. There's no 5-year plan. It's one day at a time. There's no next week plan. I just don't know. I mean, I have real trouble making plans for next month to go fishing. It's like, we'll figure it out when we get there. And, it's, I'm very grateful for all you people, because there's no way I could do this life without you guys, every one of you. And, it's like new people come in and think they don't matter. They, most of the time they matter the most, because they reiterate that, this isn't easy. It isn't easy. And I think as Sue, meeting makers make it. And I've never heard anybody that went back out come back in and say, this is so great. It's great. I saw a guy that I helped the other day, and man, he's got back out drinking. He avoided me like the plague. And I don't have, I just was glad he was alive. And he's like, oh, life's great. Life's great. And, yeah. The second DUI doesn't matter. I lost my kids. You don't know. It takes what it takes. And I was very glad that I didn't commit suicide, because I would have missed him. And missed all this, missed all you guys. One day at a time, and we can do together what I couldn't never do alone. And that's not just not drink. That means get through from 4 o'clock this morning until 10 o'clock tonight. And ask if you're new, just ask for help. And if people can't, if the person you ask can't for help, they'll know somebody that can. Pyramid scheme that nobody ever gets the top of. Some days I'm on the top, some days I'm on the bottom. But it's a triangle, right? So anyway, thank you guys for being here. It was a pleasure.